Welcome,
Say,
everybody. It's PowerShell Wednesday. Every single Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, and then you can translate that into your local time. We meet for PowerShell meetups. We talk PowerShell, and this is a very close to my heart episode today with David Richmond, longtime friend, actually. First time he'll be on the podcast later today as well, but he's going to share his insights into splatting, from what splatting is, how to kind of start getting your feet wet with using it to improve your parameter calling, all the way down to some advanced
oh
tricks
yeah.
that you'll perhaps run into as you're writing functions, modules, whatever have you. But David, take it away, my friend.
All right. Thanks, Andrew. It is a pleasure to be here. And I am, of course, excited to talk about splatting, which, while it has a silly name, is not silly at all. It's actually really cool. But let's start at the basics, right? So let's imagine you're writing some PowerShell, right? I've got VS Code up here. Could be using something else, but you're probably writing a script. And if you're just typing commands into the console, it's a little bit harder to use this. But if you're writing a script, this is where you're going to love yourself if you actually learn how to use it. So, thinking about how we're first calling random functions, let's just run, right? Got invoke rest method. It's got a single parameter right here, URI, and we're pointing at a geolocation API. Let's give that a run. Okay, so that works, right? We just have our command, a single parameter, and then that parameter's argument. Well, there's other things we might want to do, and there's a lot of parameters on invoke rest method, right? Remember, if you ever want to know what those parameters are, just control space after that dash to start, and you can scroll through the huge long list of stuff. It's incredible to see how many more parameters are in 7 versus 5. If you're not used to 7, the things you'll see in here are 7, but I'll be talking about 5 too, because I don't know about you guys, and shout out if you do this. If you deploy PowerShell 7 to your corporate endpoints, well, let me know. We don't, and I'm always curious to see what people are doing there. But anyway, let's say you want to put some other parameters on this function, right? This command invoke rest method. We're going to skip the HTTP error check, or well, this API will sometimes return a 429 if we spam it too much, which we're not going to do. But just in case, we don't want that to screw us up. So there we go. One more parameters. Okay, we also, just in case, we have some weird corporate inspection. Glad to hear 7's everywhere. That's awesome, or at least almost. We've got some weird corporate inspection of certificates happening, and maybe this site has certificate pinning or something, and it's really mad about that. You'll notice too, it's HTTP, so it's going to be pretty annoyed at that. So let's just tell it to skip certificate check, right? So we've got 2 extra parameters on here in addition to URI. That's 3. Getting kind of long, but that's okay. Now, this info is pretty important, right? We need to know, where am I? Yeah, so Florida, right? Go Florida. So invoke rest method, add on some more parameters here. We're already doing these. Let's add one more to send this out to a file. And that's going to go out just to the JSON file because it actually is coming out as JSON. So let's pop this out. All right, everything's still working, right? We've got our JSON there, looking good. And you'll notice here as we type and add parameters, well, yes, the green mouse cursor. I hope you guys enjoy it. As we add parameters, now I have to scroll over. I don't know about you guys, but I have text wrapping turned on in VS Code. Sometimes, but not all the time, and it's just kind of annoying. But we actually need to add one more parameter here. I'd like to make sure that this thing doesn't see me using the normal user agent that PowerShell sends, and I also want to make sure that it knows that I want JSON back, just in case I forget to specify it here. So we'll have, well, now we've got URI, skip HTTP error check, skip cert check, out file, and this headers, which takes a hash table. And the hash table, well, look at this. This is absurd. It's all over the place, right? So it's just getting a little bit crazy. And for good measure, let's see what this REST method invocation is actually doing, right? Okay, so we've got an HTTP. We've got stuff going on. But look at this. It's just all over the place. What if we want to look at this really quickly at some point and it's just not working, right? Yeah, Jake, I'm twitching too. It's just not gonna work out. So what can we do? So splatting is here to the rescue, right? Now, you could use backticks. We're not going to talk about backticks. Basically, if you see backticks recommended somewhere, except inside of a string, if you see them used for line breaks, you probably don't want to do that. There's reasons why you sometimes do, but when it comes to just putting a command in a script and making sure that it's readable and legible, splatting is what you want. And here's how it works. It's got this little guy here. This is just a hash table, right? Simple at with curly brackets, just a hash table. We'll assign it to a variable here, which I'm going to call invoke rest method splat for convenience. And later you'll see why that might be helpful. And then here, you'll note we had the URI parameter. Okay, now we have a URI key in our hash table, and this is the argument there. And that's our value for that key. So all that splatting is dropping your parameters and their arguments into a hash table without the without the hyphen. Don't put the little hyphen here. I'll have a bad time, right? So don't forget, no hyphens in your splats. But we build this hash table. We add all our parameters in there. So a couple things, right? This one's pretty obvious. And I know we're hitting the basics, but just want to make sure it's all clear, right? This one's obvious, it's just URI, cut and paste. This one though, this is actually a switch parameter. So a switch takes if you just declare it outright on your command, then it doesn't need any additional decoration. You could weirdly do things like this, or very weirdly do things like this to set it to false, overriding your setting of it anyway. There's reasons to do it, but they're weird. Since you can't just declare it here, it has to have value. All it needs is a Boolean, right? Switch, set it to true if you want to use it, and delete it if you don't. That's probably the best way to do it. Out file, again, pretty easy. Just copying and pasting the argument of that parameter out file into this hash table out file here. Okay, and then this last one, headers. Well, this takes a hash table, right? And we're going to embed this hash table into this other hash table. You can nest these infinitely. You could have, well, there's a layer at which it stops working. About as many as you conceivably could realistically want to do will work fine. So we've got our hash table in there, and you'll notice that's just a copy and paste exactly as it was from that opening hash table with the @ and the curly brackets over to this hash table value here. So there we go. And lastly, we tack on another switch parameter, set it to true, and we're off. So we've constructed our parameters. Now we need to tell this command line, invoke rest method, what to do. So normally you put parameters in here with hyphens and words. But for splatting, you put an @. This is the magic, right? Don't use the $, you'll have a bad day. Use the @, and this is gonna autofill. And yeah, so this will now take the value of this and run it here. Of course, it's not defined yet, so we're gonna go ahead and just run this to make sure that hash table's in there. And let's check it, just select this variable, drop it out to the console with F8, make sure it all looks good. This is kind of annoying sometimes. You might see that they're out of order. So personally, I sometimes tack on ordered here to turn this into an ordered dictionary, which works just as well.
Pro
Let's
tip.
do that again.
That's a pro tip right there.
I hope so. This ordered thing, otherwise it'll just look weird. You'll be like, why is my stuff out of order? There you go. So now we're all in order, right? Order in the PowerShell. All right. Okay, so we've got our hash table. Let's make sure that setting it to ordered actually worked. And it did. Now everything's lined up just as we expected to be. Just makes it easier for eyeballing stuff, right? And now we can call it. So we've got our hash table added to make sure that it is a splat. Again, if you don't put you'll see, we'll do it later and see how it screws stuff up. Now we can run it. And as you see, we get another splatted JSON out here, just as we asked for. And there we go. So that's splatting. All right, everyone, have a great day. Have a good one. Just kidding. But that really is as easy as it gets, right? It is simply a way to run a command in a script with arguments that are themselves kind of codified, not just as, on the same line as your command, but in a hash table. And there are things that you can do since your code is now modifiable, your code is codable. You've got your code as code, and you can code with your code. So we're going to see a few of the ways in which you can kind of screw around with hash tables. Um, but let's just talk about other uses of this, right? Maybe you don't use InfoCrest method. Maybe you're using Microsoft Graph, right? When you connect to Graph with, and yes, Samwa is absolutely right. You can also use arrays. I'll talk about that later, but it's a great way when you just want to send something natively. But here we're just going to use PowerShell commands, right? So they'll take our pretty looking hash tables. This one, if you're connecting to Graph with an app registration, which is something I do every day, all day, you got to tell it what your certificate thumbprint is, which hopefully you're, dynamically getting, but I just made one up for here. And you've got to have a few other things on there. And they're just annoying. Imagine if we had this all on the same line, right? It would extend out to, I don't know, way off of my screen anyway. But yeah, this would work. Now I don't have this. This is just a made up start, so it won't work. So I'm not going to run it, but this is how you would, right? Same thing as before. It's a variable that holds a hash table where the keys are your parameters and the values are your arguments. You call it with the @ sign. Now there's Justin, I will show Splatting IntelliSense later. I promise. Don't worry. It's not going to be left behind. Absolutely. Do not worry. uh, well, I don't have the MG modules installed on this computer, so don't worry about it. We'll try it somewhere else. Let's just think about other times where you would need those, right? Here's creating a module manifest. If you actually have to type all this out on one line, look at this. Like, this is going to be like 5 lines. If you turn on text wrapping, it's going to be crazy. Now, splat it, right? You notice here, this has $. If you do this, you're going to have a bad day. So I'm going to set this back to @ well, let's just run it with the $. What's the worst that can happen, right? Oh, no. Oh, okay. Well, that's because, yeah, don't worry about that. That's a custom function that I probably didn't import. Funny if it actually didn't exist. But yeah, you don't want to use the $. Use an @ sign. Let's look at another one. I actually pulled this out of it's an older thing, but has anyone's used SCCM? Some of those SCCM commandlets are crazy. There are dozens of parameters on some of them. It's hilarious. Anyway, imagine having this all typed on one line. And not just for like, it doesn't look beautiful and clean. It's not just beautiful and clean. Imagine having to scroll over to the right here and add each one of those parameters. Or if we go up here, imagine if I want to change the output file, I have to control arrow over here to move by words, and it's just crazy. That's just not maintainable. Splatting will save you. So there we go. Now we can create our SCCM bootable media and not have to worry about anything. So yes, the thing with the you'll see these hash tables. They look really, really nice, don't they? They've got these equal signs all in order. Well, what if I feel a little bit chaotic and I want to just move them all over and out of it, right? Like, what if I'm just feeling chaos monkey here? What did Netflix have years ago? What is that took their data centers down for fun? All right, so now we've got true chaos in our hash table. And most likely, it looked like this. You'd have a single space between your equal signs. Easy to fix. Yeah, I know I'm a monster. Right here, VS Code makes it super simple. We've got format selection. You can format the whole thing. I'm just going to do this. And look at this. Bam. Equal signs all in a row. Now, I think I'd prefer if it was one more, just for that. But don't worry. Don't worry. Yeah, so there we go, right? There's a lot of interesting things we can do from here, but this is the basics. Christian, absolutely, you can combine multiple splats. You could have one splat to set certain things and another splat to set other things. So you could for instance, if you wanted um, to specify certain parameters, other param splats, we'll have this, drop it in there, put that guy there. And now, if we wanted to, we could call both of these at the same time by doing this. Just as easy as that. And you could even, if you need to, override splat parameters live, right? You'll see I have the site code parameter. Don't worry about what that is. It's just meaningless SCCM nonsense, but it's just for fun here, right? We could say site code here and override it. Maybe we want it to be Parash. Add an H, but I don't want them to be more than 3 characters. And that will override what you set in your splat. So keep in mind, if you forget to remove the parameters and then you modify your splat and things don't change, that's probably why. You left some statically defined parameters all in there. Stephen, bummer. But yeah. Oh, and you can also just add additional parameters in here. You'll see I don't have verbose in there. One of my favorite commandlets. Our favorite parameters in there. Not that the SCCM modules actually output anything, but they do their best. So we might also tack in a what if, makes things hypothetical. We're going to talk about what if a lot later. Okay, so those are the basics. Let's look at some more fancy stuff. So let's think about what we can do with these. They're just hash tables, right? So let's do some module installs. We've got our module install splat here. We're going to install the as accounts module out of the PS gallery. And we want to skip the publisher check, since what if we want to install this from somewhere else, or it's another module. You probably shouldn't do this in production, but it can be fun. If you have not got properly published modules to an internal repo, you'll often be doing this. And so that's what we used to do before we got a proper NuGet setup. So yeah, we've got our module splat here, and now we could install that module. And let's see what that'll do. It's going to run a bunch of stuff. Oh, that's pretty funny. So what's going on here, right? I've got the wrong parameter, right? So let's take a look at a beautiful feature that was added. Actually, I think it's a VS Code feature. I'm sure someone in the chat will correct me if that's wrong. But you'll notice a couple things. Whoops, actually, this is why that didn't work. Don't worry about that. There's a amazing option that you have for dynamically looking up your parameters. And you'll see I hit control space to do that, right? So it's control space and it loads those. Now this hash table doesn't know anything, but VS Code knows that you have assigned this splat. Oh, does it, Justin? That's amazing. I had no idea. That's awesome. Okay. PS feature. Wow. So okay, so PowerShell itself is letting the, I don't know, is it the parsing engine? That's magic. That's at another level that I'm not at. It's letting it know that you're using this splat in this function or commandlet. And so when you control space, it gives you the same thing, the list of those options for your parameters, as you get if you do it straight on the parameter, on the function or commandlet itself. Amazingly useful. You really cannot go wrong. I will put that name back in there now that it's not badly noted. Alrighty, so we run that, give it a whirl. It's gonna do a bunch of stuff. I'll just let it go. While that's spinning its face, let's imagine here that for some reason we don't want to skip the publisher check. Now, you could just delete it from here, but what if you want to use it for something else, right? Since this is just a hash table, we can remove well, actually first, let's do a couple things for cleanliness. Set this to ordered so that I can do this, so that I can do this, right? We declared that hash table, assigned it, executed it, and now we're going to look at it. Now it's all in order. You'll see here, we're just going to, this is a standard hash table operation, removing this key. Now we'll take a look at this guy. What's in that? One less parameter. Well, let's also remove repository from update module since it doesn't like that. And we'll leave the others in there. So you'll see we've got update splat in here, or for our module splat, and it's just got those 3. What if we wanted to do that? It's probably going to say it's not installed, but it might be. All right, so it is, and it would update it from something very, very old to something much newer. And there you go, right? We've got modification of splats. And again, think about if you're executing this in a script, if you want to check for something to add a parameter, you can do that too. So conditional, all right, Shelby, all right, I hear you. It's fixed. There we go. We've got conditional ability for parameter modifications. It's basic if statements, however you want to do it. Here we're checking to make sure if the PS version is 7 or more. I actually don't know when the scope parameter was added to update module. I'm sure someone will correct that if they know. But that didn't use, it doesn't, definitely does not exist in 5.1. And so if we're in 7, I want to add it. So run that, and we'll see what's in our module splat now. Yeah, there we go. PS version is actually higher than that, and we're going to update module with that. So there you go. That's you've got modification inline, and I'm doing this on demand. I don't have to. I could actually put this in a script and run it, offline, and it would work just fine. So there we go. Now let's talk about. Now we're going to get a little bit crazier. So let's imagine that you've got a script here. I'm putting it into a function just so that it's a little bit more contained. And we've got a bunch of parameters. And this script or function, I'm going to call it invoke module requirement. It's going to check for a module to see if it's installed. And if it is, it's going to update it. And if it's not, it's going to install it. It saves us retyping all of that stuff, right? Functions are amazing since you don't have to copy and paste the same stuff over and over. And we're using splats in an interesting way here. You'll notice I have parameters here for name, repository, where does this module come from, what's the scope, and do we want to actually see the verbose output of the modules? You'll notice there's a lot of output when you install or even just find a module. Kind of annoying. So we're going to set it probably to false, but just as an option. All right, anyway, here we've actually got our splats. Interesting things we're doing here. This is in the begin block of the function. And just think of that as your initialization stage, right? It won't run more than once if you're piping things in. And while I don't have, I took this function from an internal module that we have for doing this kind of thing on installs that we do. But if you're piping things in to this function, things in the begin phase run once, and then I'm not going to comment on the comma placement. It's there for a reason. It's okay. But we've got our parameters in here, and they're in the begin block. They'll only run once. So we're just going to initialize some base splats. This is a little contrived, right? But just for fun, it'll give us some interesting ideas about what's going on. Yeah, you guys really don't like the commas, huh? You'll be okay, I promise. But yeah, let's set up some splats here. So we've got our install module splat, our update module splat, which doesn't have scope or skip publish or check, and then a find module splat, which again, it just got the name, whether we want it to be verbose or not. And you'll notice this is taking a Boolean out of that super verbose switch, which will be, true or false. It doesn't need bool on it, but all right, and to here, we're doing a similar check for the PS version. If it matches 7, then we're going to add scope. And if we specified the repository in our script or function, you might not have to, right? The default is PS Gallery. So if you are using the PS Gallery, that's fine. If you're using an internal repository, well, you could specify it or you might not. If it is specified, we'll add it where it needs to be. And so this is a simple iterator that loops through all your module names and uses those splats to look those up, right? It'll take each one, set the name to the module name. There are simpler ways to do this, but just to give you an idea of what you can do, we'll look at a better example later, just so you can think about how you can use splats to make things not just cleaner, but easier. You can dynamically set things in an iterative fashion. Okay, so this works pretty well. there are other use cases, and let's go see them. Yeah, I wish I had a vertical monitor, but presenting it just I've got two vertical monitors actually at work. Thank goodness. All right, I did promise that we would hit IntelliSense, and we already did. But again, um, if you actually wanted to have IntelliSense on on your on your splats, very easy to do. I don't know if I have this function available, so let's just change this to write host and new host splat. Well, I'll just call it that. And we know that our, well, no, let's pretend we don't know what our parameters are, right? Again, by the magic of control space, we can see all of our options. Set the foreground color to dark cyan. That's a fun one. And then we'll give it that. And how about a background color too? Sure, why not? That's going to be pretty unreadable, actually. Magenta. Can't go wrong with magenta. Yeah, control space is amazing. You really can't go wrong with it. If you don't use it, uh, you, once you're in control space, let's imagine here. Well, this works better on the command line. If you're actually doing um, you can hit this and see the list. You can also tab through your options. But look how many, like, look at all the tab spam. And look how it's hard. You can shift tab to move backwards through the list, but it's a lot easier to control space and see that list of them. So you can arrow keys to select it. So I can't say it enough. You'll be amazed how often I run into people who just didn't know control space existed. Um, all right, so there we go, right? IntelliSense, use it. It's amazing. I mentioned earlier that you really don't want to forget to use the @ sign. It'll ruin your day. Let's just see what happens here, right? What the heck? What's it gonna do? What is it actually gonna try to do? You'll see. It's going to try to take this and use it as the first positional parameters argument, but it's a hash table. So the hash table is gonna get toStringed, and it's gonna say cannot convert the system collections hash table value to type system URI. Well, it's expecting this to be the URI. I'm saying this because I imagine, I don't know about you guys, but I've done this a handful of times, and inevitably it's on some custom function 3 levels deep that ends up being, I don't know, maybe it's just tough to figure out what's actually going on. So I wish, and if I had, maybe somebody else knows if this exists, I wish there was a PS script analyzer rule out there that would check for these. Maybe just wishing it to exist will mean it already does. But I wish there was, and this should be flagged as a warning in here. Hey, you're invoking, a splat, but with the wrong symbol. That would be nice. Anyway, with it actually invoked as that, we get our beautiful output, and yeah, everything's good. Then just watch your. I have thought of it, Shep. Just haven't dived into it. All right. Other options too. Let's say you have an array of splats. Uh, Everyone knows, and hopefully, yeah, it's true. Yeah, Justin, it's true. I'd love to opt into it though, because personally, I would never do it otherwise. Especially if I could say if it's named Splat, better have an @ sign on it. Anyway, if you have a bunch of splats, remember splats are hash tables. So let's inspect these guys. Now, wish me luck actually finding the output of that on another monitor. All right. You won't be able to see it. That is a bummer. All right. Well, yeah, could I do that? All right. Trust me. If you're used to hash table output, if you ever pipe it to out grid view just for quick inspection, it's going to look like a long list of keys and values, keys in one column, values in another, which is very annoying to look at. So you'll probably have a better time if instead of just doing that, you'd convert them to PS custom objects. Could I bubble pick? Could I copy and paste a screenshot? I bet I could. That's a good point.
Oh, nice. I was gonna say use out console grid view.
Console grid view is a great option too.
But
And
honestly,
we don't
I
have
never
that.
trust the integrated terminal for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, same, especially in VS Code. Um, yeah. All right. Anyway, you can't see it, but trust me, it looks a lot better. Okay, that's really the extent of the basics. There's other stuff to talk about too if we want to get really complicated, right? Here is a very contrived function to invoke complicated action, and it's setting stuff dynamically inside the function, right? So you give it a name, maybe it's a username or maybe it's something else. It's going to look up a bunch of stuff. It's going to check how many days are in the month. It's going to get an authorization code, and it's going to, in the end, create a splat and then call it. And if we drop what if on this function, then it'll show us what the hypothetical output would be. And let's go ahead and load this up. I only mention this because it's a silly utility thing, right? But it has come in handy a couple times. So let's say we're going to run this and want to see what it'll do. Let's give it a name of Splatting Forever. And we don't need an authorization code. We're just, by default authorized. I will tack on what if. Right now, remember, we've got what if support thanks to the support should process and the use of ps commandlet dot should process in here. So this will execute. It'll load. And when the function executes, it'll say, oh, you said what if, so we're not going to do it. And it'll run the else block. So what'll this do? It'll show us what our splat was, right? Remember, we generated this hash table with its values dynamically. And so we didn't really know what it was before. Now we've run the code, and inside the function, it knows what it is. And for us to be able to inspect it, you've either got to turn on the debugger, which is awesome and fun. Not always what you want to do. Some people, if you haven't used it, takes some getting used to. Highly recommend testing it out. Just click this little red dot to turn it on, and you'll be pretty amazed at how it works. It's very fun. But let's say you don't want to do that, right? We've got here, we're taking the splat in our else block from should process, which means it's only going to happen because we specified what if on this. And now we can see this splat is a hash table that gets formatted as a list, added to a string, and then piped to the warning stream. You could do it a million other different ways if you wanted to. This is just a fun way, so it's pretty obvious. The format list makes it cleans up a little bit of formatting depending on the type of your objects or the properties that are contained in your splat. Just cleans up the formatting a little bit, and it's just going out to the host, so we don't care. So yeah, format list and out string to clean up that formatting. Okay, so let's delete all the data. There we go. Now we're deleting it all, and maximum priority. All right. Okay, one more use of splats. Let's say you've got a hypothetical scenario that you want to run. This is an even more complicated one, which is going to be a dangerous action. And because of that, not only should process, but confirm impact, right? So let's go ahead and load this up, and I'll show you what it does. For a lot of the times, if you're running complicated scripts and you want to make sure that you know not only what happens, but what will happen or what might happen, and if it does, whether it worked or not. So here, honestly, it looks like a lot, but it's very simple. Here we've got our splat. It sets a bunch of stuff dynamically. What those things are, it doesn't matter. We've got should process here. It's set to output the what if string, doing complicated things. And then we're going to hypothetically invoke that. And if it doesn't error out, right, we'll set error action to stop here. If it doesn't error out, yes, okay. All right. You guys are really good about noticing that. It's amazing. All right. If it doesn't error out, then it's going to head through, and obviously we need try-catch handling here, but contrived examples. If it doesn't error, it's going to add to the splat, right? So we've got a hash table. We're adding to it in the success case. Now, if if that didn't happen, we would have a try catch block to set it to false. But let's imagine too the scenario where you want to run a hypothetical, and this is the real beauty of this. We can generate splats for multiple things, and we can say what those actions would be. Remember, we don't know exactly what's going to happen before we run it, but once we generate the code, we do. So at the time of code execution, you don't know. You only know what happens after it runs. So we want to have support should process in there for what if, so we can check and see what would happen if we do this crazy dangerous thing. And yeah, in the case of the what else, we're going to add some properties to this, and we're going to emit the splat in either case. And what that gives us is a way to have similar output for both execution and hypothetical execution. This lets you do some cool stuff. So let's run this and see what it dumps out. Okay. Um, don't worry about that. What we're looking at here is we're just going to set this to false where I forgot to paste it in earlier. Run that again. Oh, what am I actually doing? I must have not actually. Yeah. All you have to do here is drop that down. Well, let's pretend that that worked. We see our splat. It shows us what it would be if it ran. And the important thing is you can see what it did with the identical output with different properties on the object output versus if you just run it. So this lets us have comparable outputs for hypothetical execution and for actual execution. So you run it, you might even be writing a separate commandlet to generate your splats and another to execute it. So you might have one that generates your hypothetical splats as a staging, for instance. And this kind of double checking and cross checking and back checking is important and highly sensitive scenarios like deleting all users or something. Yeah, so that's all I've got here, and there's other things you can do with this. Somebody mentioned earlier using an array to send args to native commands, or I think you can even send those out to. I haven't used it, but I know people who have. Somebody mentioned it earlier, so yeah. And one last thing, have to mention. This isn't just arbitrarily made up. This is built into PowerShell, right? We've got about splatting. Okay, so get help about splatting, and you can read all about it.
Awesome.
Yeah, so once that actually loads, the about splatting help online too is really useful. Highly recommend reading through those about pages when you get a chance. But yeah, again, you just can't go wrong using it. Save yourself the pain and worry of having to manually search through your commandlet calls. Get them clean. Get those hash tables lined up. Get everything good, and you'll be a lot happier. It'll just make your code a lot cleaner and give you a lot of options for dynamic modification and reuse.
Yeah, you're going to be so grateful once you adopt it because it's seriously so much nicer to read a script. You can see sort of ultimately what it's going to do, and then you can just follow along the logic on how it gets there based on the params and whatnot. So much nicer. Awesome job. Thank you, sir. And we need
you got it.
We got to hop off here to do a podcast here soon. We're actually going to have a post hangout for a little bit in the PDQ Discord, discord.gg/PDQ in the chit chat channel. We'll be chitting and chatting for a few minutes and then peeling off to get a good podcast underway. David Richmond, thank you so much for joining me today and all of us out there who are here live. But where can we find you on the internet if we want to stay in touch?
I'm on Blue Sky, davidrichmond.com, and I've got a blog. I haven't posted on it recently, but at some point I'll get up to it.
Awesome, and I will include those links in the description below. David, thank you. And we'll see you next week at PowerShell Wednesday, new PowerShell podcast on Monday. We got all the PowerShell, and this is going to be a session that I point people to for a while because I talk about splatting all the time, and it's hard to speak to it with just words. It really helps to see it in action. So thank you for that.